the open road, a ribbon of asphalt unspooling through the darkness. For some, it represents freedom, a chance to escape. But for those behind the wheel of 18-wheelers hauling cargo through the night, it can be something else entirely. Something sinister, something terrifying. Tonight we're diving deep into the dark heart of the American trucking industry. We're talking to the men and women who've seen things they can't explain, things that defy logic and reason, things that'll make you think twice about ever setting foot outside your door again. Get ready to be spooked with these 3 terrifying true trucker stories that will send shivers down your spine. These disturbing tales are based on real-life events that will leave you questioning what might be lurking on those long, dark highways. Buckle up and prepare yourself for a journey into the unknown with these chilling accounts that will haunt you for life. Watch if you dare. It was a moonless night in the Nevada desert. The kind of night where the silence is so complete it feels like it could swallow you whole. Big Jim, a seasoned trucker with 1,000,000 miles under his belt, was barreling down a desolate stretch of Highway 50, known by locals as the loneliest road in America. His CB crackled with static, the only sound besides the low rumble of his engine. Up ahead in the hazy glow of his headlights, Jim spotted a lone figure, a woman dressed in a white dress, her thumb jutting out into the night. Now, Jim wasn't usually one to pick up hitchhikers. It was against company policy. And besides, you never knew who you were going to get these days. But there was something about the woman, something in her desperate stance that made him pull over. As she climbed into the cab, a chill ran down Jim's spine. Her skin was ice cold and her eyes seemed to hold a 1,000-yard stare. She introduced herself as Sarah, her voice a barely audible whisper. She said she was heading to Reno to meet her brother. Jim tried to make small talk to break the unsettling silence that had settled over the cab, but Sarah just stared straight ahead, her gaze fixed on the endless ribbon of road unwinding before them. Hours crawled by, the miles ticking away under the wheels of Jim's rig. He offered Sarah coffee, a bite to eat, but she refused. The only movement she made was the occasional tremble that ran through her body, like she was fighting off a terrible chill. As they approached the turnoff for Hawthorne, Sarah finally spoke. "This is it," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. Jim pulled over, surprised. He could have sworn she said she was going to Reno. Before he could question her, she was gone, vanished. 1 minute she was sitting right there in his passenger seat, the next there was nothing but empty space. Jim jumped out of the cab, his heart pounding in his chest. He checked the sleeper, the side of the road, even the trailer, but there was no sign of Sarah. It was like she had disappeared into thin air. Shaken to his core, Jim climbed back into his truck and drove the rest of the night with a knot of dread in his stomach. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had encountered something truly unsettling. Years later, long after he retired from trucking, Jim could still vividly recall that night. The eerie silence of the desert, the woman's ice-cold skin, and her sudden, inexplicable disappearance. He never picked up another hitchhiker again. Some say that Sarah is still out there wandering the lonely stretches of Highway 50, searching for a ride that will never come, a phantom of the open road, forever bound to the asphalt and the darkness. The air hung heavy and humid over the Mississippi Delta, the stench of diesel and stagnant water thick in the air. Dale, a young trucker on his first solo haul, pulled his rig into a deserted rest stop just outside Greenville. He was behind schedule, exhausted, and just needed a quick nap before pushing on. The rest stop was deserted, the fluorescent lights buzzing over a cracked asphalt parking lot. The only other vehicle was a beat-up old van tucked away in the shadows at the far end of the lot. Dale tried to shake off the uneasy feeling that crept up his spine. It was probably nothing, just his nerves getting the better of him. He locked his cab and stretched out on his bunk, the drone of distant traffic a lullaby in the stifling heat. He was jolted awake what felt like hours later by a scratching sound. Someone was trying to pick the lock on his cab door. Dale's heart hammered in his chest as he grabbed his tire iron, his only weapon, and held his breath, listening. The scratching stopped. Silence. Then a low, guttural growl coming from just outside his door. Terror gripped Dale, paralyzing him. He lay there, frozen, as the growling continued, punctuated by the sound of heavy footsteps circling his rig. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Finally, the sound of an engine roared to life, the headlights from the van momentarily blinding Dale before it screeched out of the rest stop and disappeared into the night. Dale lay there for a long time, his body trembling, the image of those headlights seared into his brain. He didn't sleep a wink the rest of the night. The next morning, at a truck stop a few miles down the road, Dale saw a news report on the diner TV that chilled him to the bone. Police were searching for a suspect in a string of brutal murders along the I-40 corridor. The suspect's vehicle, a beat-up old van, the suspect's description, a hulking figure with a grotesquely scarred face. The news showed a sketch of the suspect. Dale's blood ran cold. It was the face he saw staring back at him in the reflection of his side mirror as the van pulled out of the rest stop. From that day forward, Dale never stopped at a rest stop unless it was bustling with other truckers. The memory of that night, the growling, the footsteps, the face in the mirror, haunted his every mile. He knew deep down that he had been marked that night, singled out by something evil. He was just lucky to have escaped its clutches. Chapter 3. The Ghostly Convoy. A thick blanket of fog had settled over the Pennsylvania Turnpike, reducing visibility to mere feet. Mary, a veteran trucker known for her nerves of steel, gripped the wheel of her rig, her knuckles white. It was the kind of fog that seemed to have a life of its own, swirling and shifting, playing tricks on your eyes. She slowed her pace, her headlights cutting through the gloom, barely illuminating the road ahead. Suddenly, out of the swirling whiteness, a set of taillights appeared in front of her, then another and another, until she was surrounded by a convoy of trucks, their headlights casting an eerie glow on the fog. She hadn't seen another vehicle for hours. She keyed her CB, hoping to get some information on the unexpected company. Breaker 19, this is Silver Fox. Anyone else catching this convoy on the turnpike? Over. Static. She tried again. Breaker 19, Silver Fox, come back? Only the hiss of static answered her. Unease prickled at the back of Mary's neck. The trucks around her were moving in an almost hypnotic rhythm, their engines humming a low, mournful dirge. She tried to overtake them, but every time she pulled out, the fog seemed to thicken, obscuring the road ahead. As the miles ticked by, the hair on the back of Mary's neck began to stand on end. The trucks surrounding her were ancient, models she hadn't seen in decades. Their paint faded and chipped, their chrome rusted and dull. And there was something strange about the way they moved, almost drifting, as if they were being carried by an unseen current. She glanced at the truck next to her, its driver barely visible through the grime-streaked windshield. He was pale, gaunt, his eyes hollow and black, fixed on some distant point on the road ahead. Mary quickly looked away, her heart pounding against her ribs. She had heard the stories, whispered among truckers in hushed tones at all-night diners. Stories of phantom convoys, ghostly truckers forever driving their final routes, searching for something they could never find. Suddenly the fog began to dissipate as quickly as it had descended. The road ahead became clear, and Mary found herself approaching an exit. She glanced in her side mirror, but the convoy had vanished. There was no sign of the trucks, the drivers, nothing but the empty highway stretching out before her. Shaken, Mary pulled off at the next exit and stopped at a truck stop. She sat in her cab, drinking cup after cup of coffee, trying to convince herself that she had imagined it all, that the fog and exhaustion had played tricks on her mind. But deep down she knew she had seen something truly unsettling that night. something that whispered of another world, just beyond the veil of our own. She never spoke of the ghostly convoy to anyone, but the memory of that night, the eerie silence, the drifting trucks, and the hollow-eyed drivers stayed with her, a chilling reminder of the secrets that lurk on the open road. The open road can be a lonely, unforgiving place, especially for the truckers who call it home. They brave the elements, the long hours, and the isolation to deliver the goods that keep our world moving. But sometimes, the things they encounter on the road go beyond the realm of the ordinary. Remember, these stories are based on real-life events, so the next time you're driving down a dark highway, keep your eyes peeled. You never know what might be out there. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more spine-chilling stories. Stay safe out there, and until next time, keep your eyes on the road and your mind on the stories.